Marilyn, CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs and the host of our weekly live video series called Center Stage. We are sadly but proudly nearing the end of our second season about the magic of teams and all the things that make teams cohesive, high performing, and happy. We are now beginning the last and fourth chapter of the season, all about growing teams. After having discussed team dynamics, building teams, and coaching teams, we thought it would be a good idea to wrap up the season with insights and experiences and perspectives on scaling teams. And so for the next three weeks, I think, every Thursday, I'll be joined by an expert and a thought leader on LinkedIn Live at 3:30 p.m. UAE time every week to discuss this matter. Before we begin, as always, do show us some love. Give this video a like. If you're around, tell us where you're joining from. Don't forget to ask any question that you might have. And as always, I'll make sure to try and get Tariq to answer all of those. Our guest for today is Tariq Saiduddin. He's a partner and CEO of Zention Technologies, Inc., the largest device services platform in the GCC. He has a master's of business and language from the Gothenburg School of Business and Commercial Law and a computer software engineering diploma. His expertise has helped him lead multiple startups into becoming global growth companies over the past few years. And as part of the Zention executive partner team, operating from its Dubai HQ, Tariq and his associates have been working towards enhancing consumer experiences in the embedded financial and technology services sector in the GCC since 2014. He's previously held positions as both CCO and COO, and circled back to his tech background with his current role as CTO and COO, managing the development of Zention Technologies and all of the brands that they're developing. His core philosophy when it comes to Zention is to fulfill a service consumers both want and need. And he has a vision to be the leading device consumer service provider, both regionally and globally, which is a really beautiful goal to work towards. In the past, he's worked with consumer brands like IKEA, H&M, Absolute, and MSN Search. He was featured on the cover of Microsoft Executive Circle for digitizing and merging his previous company's scattered businesses into one platform. And he is a Super Company award-winning CEO in 2011. He's also held conferences in consumer relations, marketing, and technology. Tariq, I am so happy to have you join us here today.
Thank you, Marilyn. That was a wonderful introduction, and I'm awesome. It's awesome to be invited and be on the show. Thank you.
Honestly, I couldn't think of anybody else to talk to about this topic, so I'm really glad that you agreed to come on board. Let me introduce our topic for the day. The ability to scale and grow is a sign of a team's or an organization's success in the marketplace. We're all after that holy grail of growth. But of course, anyone who's attempted to do that knows that this process comes with challenges and growing pains. To thrive in scaling teams, leaders need to be good at so many things, and they need to be so proactive, not only about the business and market positioning side and growing, of course, the revenues of the company, but also internally by upskilling team members, improving performance management, adapting or helping support leadership in evolving the team dynamics, creating a healthy and cohesive culture, aligning everybody, hiring the right people. There are just so many things to take care of when you scale a team. Not least of all is that you will also probably have a wider geographic distribution in most cases. And this comes with its own set of difficulties, not only in staying on top of the different global market trends, which when you were located in just one place, you could perhaps ignore for a bit, but also having to put more effort in aligning team members that are now scattered across the globe. And Tariq, who scaled more than one team and organization in the past, is going to share with us his secrets and perspectives on this topic. So Tariq, I'm going to start us off. I love definitions. I often start the show with one. Tell us, what does it mean to scale a team or an organization?
Well, Marilyn, for me, the IP in businesses is about people, right? And when you are scaling a business, it's 110% the people you choose to help you scale that business. So for me, it's about leadership. It's about taking leadership. It's about having leaders join you on a common cause. And after you got that setting done, the base of your expansion, the rest is not that hard actually. Yeah. I mean, that is the key element for me when it comes to scaling businesses. Finding the right kind of leaders that will take, your side flanks when you're growing fast. That has always been the defining character for my scaled business, the successful ones at least. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely putting together the team of Avengers is always a very important one. And in
Definitely.
your experience of scaling teams in the past, in addition to this leadership dimension, what other challenges have you faced or lessons you've learned, maybe sometimes by getting it wrong, of
Hmm.
what can go wrong as a company is scaling?
Usually it's about why we're scaling. Like what is the purpose of the business itself? And many people think that, I mean, God, you must have known, right? You must have done this first before you started pushing in people into the factory lines. But no, I mean, people today, they go by the gut on these things. And so have I. I've gone by the gut, right? I've said, okay, this, it's going to sort itself out. But no, I need to have a plan. I need to have thought it through. I need to have questioned that plan every day and have people around me question it before I actually push the button. And this is something I think is very unusual in business, like questioning a leader, questioning the purpose, questioning where we're going. That's rebellion, right? Well, I love rebellions because rebellions, they topple empires, right? And the thing is to have that kind of a culture, to have that kind of people around you, right? Uh, Whenever I didn't have those people around me, the chances of failure, or let's say the chances of success, diminish. Yeah. So doing it alone, it can work for a while, even scaling, but after a while, you kind of lose contact with why you're doing this, where you're going. And the more you grow, the harder it is to keep that body connected. That's, and we can go into that a little later on the mechanics of this. But if your purpose is unclear, if you haven't really done your homework on this, you're not ready to scale. You shouldn't scale. Yeah. Just because there's an opportunity there to scale doesn't mean you're going to be successful. It is opposite. In my case, some of the scale ups have led to a complete disaster.
Meltdown.
Meltdown, disaster. The company actually suffered and the people suffered, right? But it comes back again to the leadership in the company taking responsibility for its role in the purpose, in the strategic targets, in the values that they want to have in their common leadership and the people around them. That's how you build the organization, the processes, the tools, which comes in that order. And after that, it's about finding and having some luck in finding the right people that follow that criteria. That's what in my experience has been the difference between success or no success, yeah, or less success.
Oh, that's really great. You're making me think of a piece of trivia that I really love to bring up when we talk about scaling. I don't know if you've ever heard of something called Dunbar's number,
Oh
but
yeah.
Dunbar, yeah. So Dunbar was an anthropologist, and he discovered that when communities of humans try to form, and of course this was his research around, let's say, the first human communities to settle, but it applies beautifully to companies, if you ask me. What we've found through kind of looking at how cultures have developed is that when communities of humans grew beyond Dunbar's number, which is 150 individuals,
Mm,
um, below that number, we're able to maintain social cohesion purely through social connection, right? So
mm,
I know Tariq and he knows Khaled and I know Marie and Tala, and we can all kind of maintain sanity within our community just from connecting to each other. But
yeah.
beyond that number, we start to see, that's when we start to see the emergence of religions in their earliest forms, right? Like believing
Mm,
in animals or the sun or the rain or the moon. And the reason for that is that for human communities to organize at scale, they actually need common myths. They need to believe in the same things.
Right.
And what you're saying is really kind of maps very well to this piece of trivia, which is that, yeah, when companies are 10, 15, 50 people, um, now whether they're co-located or not also probably maybe plays into that, but you can still kind of manage just by talking to each other every day.
Yeah.
But beyond a certain size, you really have to structure that common myth, which is the purpose, the values, the way that we behave together. So I think that's really such a great insight. I want to ask you about the skills. So let's stay on the leadership level for a second, and in a minute we'll dive into the team dynamics and how you engage all of your employees in the process. But there's a quote from Ben Horowitz, who's the co-founder and general partner at Andersen Horowitz, and he says, "Managing at scale is a learned skill, not a natural ability." What do you think are the skills needed to learn to manage at scale?
Well, first of all, I think it requires much more patience than when you have a smaller business. When you have a small team, as you said, there are quick dialogues, there are quick changes, and you make decisions, quite rapidly, right? When you're a bigger organization, you need to have patience that it is a bigger organization. There are more people. Also, not everybody has the same speed of recognition or understanding of what's going on. Some people might be further away from the contact points where things are happening. So you've got waves of things happening. So it again, it boils down to communication, clarity of purpose, right? But also, if you don't have the right leaders in each level that kind of reiterate what's happening, it's going to take even more time. So the patience is about, okay, let's do this again. Let's talk about it again. Let's pick this up again. Why are we doing this? Why is this an important thing? Reminders, as we've talked about before as well. Reminders are so important because a human brain, we keep so little every day can be kept in this brain. I mean, we lose that cohesion every day. So I think being a leader in a scale up or a bigger organization requires more patience, understanding than, let's say, you're in a smaller. And this is why many of these smaller agile organization leaders can't really hack it moving up the scale. But when you scale up, because they just lose their patience and they start the negative trend of complaining or saying that there's something wrong here. And I went through that myself, from a small organization early on, my first CEO role in a team of 15 people when I was 35, to building these organizations. And I learned it the hard way that what, it's about getting the team there, not about me, right? There's no me in leadership in that sense. So for me, yeah, I learned the hard way. You make the mistakes of thinking that it's the same kind of organization, and you hit that wall, right? And it opens your eyes. Oh my God, what have I done? Who have I brought into the company?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
So,
definitely agree. I always say like 0 to 1 leaders are not always 1 to 100 leaders, you
no.
know. And we've seen that, I think, in a lot of the companies that people write about, the tech companies of this world. Like we've seen that in Google hiring Eric Schmidt to kind of babysit them through the scale process. We've seen Facebook with Sheryl Sandberg. Like there are very few leaders, like the Jeff Bezoses of this world, that are capable of going from the garage to the massive scale to their company being the size of a country.
yeah,
And sometimes it's all right to just admit that and move on,
yeah,
and find people who can. The difficulty for entrepreneurs is always to let go. I'm sure you've experienced that on both sides
yeah,
of that equation.
yes.
Um, I have a few questions here from the audience that I want to bring up since we're on the topic of leadership. So, what advice, Ray asks, what advice would you give to a leader of leaders? meaning a middle manager, no, not a middle manager, like a senior manager. How can you pass on key skill sets and values to make sure that the managers of your team know how to lead their own team members?
Yeah.
It's a
So
great question.
first, yes, a good question. So first of all, you have to lead by example. Now, I go back to my kids on this, right? So, when dad loses his patience or when something wrong happens, of course they're going to copy that. They're not going to. So if I'm not a leader, if I say one thing and then I do something else, that kind of disparity, people pick up on that. So for me, the first thing I would do, if you want to lead others, you have to walk that path. You yourself need to be strong enough to say, this is my conviction. Even in the face of an adversity, you need to keep that character going. Because that's what your leader, the other leaders are looking at. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's important that you should have a junior position first, where you actually have to take orders or accept the fact that you're a part of a team and you're not automatically leading it, because learning how to, well, serve is a bad word, but maybe learning how to listen and work with a leader can actually teach you a lot. And for a lot of young people today, it is a challenge, right? I'm saying this in general. It was a challenge for me too when I was young, because many of my leaders, I felt, didn't have the same capabilities I had or understanding for what was going on in the world. But now, when I'm a little older, I do realize that their patience and their guidance, even the things they didn't say, but what they did, actually helped me a lot on my journey, right? So I think those two elements, being having the strength of character to walk that path and also being someone who is led, is an important part of it. And then there's the other parts, like be over communicative. I love it when leaders talk a lot and they're expressive and they're engaging with their team members. Communication is the center part of leadership. You can have people around you that are better at strategy and better at giving you the right, backup. But if you're not good at communicating, I think you as a leader, if you don't pick that up, it's going to be very, very difficult. Yeah. So I'm not sure if I answered all. This is my take on it, at least. Yeah.
No, I think you definitely have. And what you said really resonated with me on a personal level. My first job for 10 years, actually. Of course, I started at the bottom of the food chain, but eventually made it to being the number two of a really inspirational entrepreneur. But he was a real entrepreneur. He was not, he had no patience for managing people. Actually, he did. I can't say that. But I did learn from his patience and sometimes learn from his impatience what not to do. And I think it was really good to be in that middle position. In fact, for a long time, I thought I would always be a great number two until I became the number one of Cosmic Centers. I'm like, hey, I can do this. It's not so
Exactly.
bad.
Exactly.
But actually, yeah, I think that thing about patience too is such a great point, because what happens when companies grow is they slow down. You think, okay, we're going at full speed ahead and things are going to keep moving and we're going to keep, at the same velocity. And actually, then suddenly the engine just drops. And it takes a minute and it takes a lot of patience and compassion to get through that hurdle. I want to talk to you about something. As we were doing research for this episode, we discovered like this concept. And when I read about it, I was like, wow, Tariq is such a great person to ask about this, because I've seen how you make choices about the leaders that you bring on board, whether you do that by hiring externally, but also through promoting young talent. I think, if I may say this live to you, I think that's such a great quality of yours, that you're able to do both, and you don't always think that the person you need to scale something needs to be some seasoned 30 plus years executive. I think that's beautiful. Let me read out the fallacy, and then I'd love to talk for you to talk through how you make those decisions, right? So the fallacy is called the scale anticipation fallacy. I'm going to try and explain this concept a little bit. And essentially, it refers to judging a team's ability to scale too fast So essentially looking at the leaders you have right now and saying, oh, they can't possibly take me where I need to go. And then hiring people from outside who are seasoned executives, which has two effects. First of all, the seasoned executives might be too far down their experience curve and they will actually not be able to adapt to these early stages. And then the second thing is you take away the opportunity for internal young leaders to actually learn everything that they need to learn in the next 12 months or 24 months to get where they can lead at scale. That's kind of the concept as I understood it. And as I was reading, I was like, wow, Tara is really good at doing both those things, like picking when is the right moment to bring a seasoned leader, but also really believing in the power of the talent in your own team. Talk to me about that.
Okay, this is this is a very interesting topic. I love this topic. Now, first of all, I try to look at the person, Marilyn, not what's on the CV, because at the end of the day, when you're in the trenches, yeah, regardless if you've done this 20 times, every time when you start that walk on a scale up, it's different. Yeah. So many people that have done things before, they use their framework, right, of reference, and they try to apply solutions that they've done before, and it's not working, and they become a little lost. That's one aspect of it. People with fresh minds that haven't actually walked down that path, they take a different route to that place, right? Doesn't mean it's all correct. Sorry. It means that it's the combination, Marilyn, which I love, right? I mean, I brought in, thank God, we brought in seasoned professionals who don't have an ego issue. You know what I mean? They can actually step into a situation and say, oh, this person is 20 years younger than me, but you know what? If I listen here a bit, I might actually learn something, and we can do this together. So it's about the attitude of the person coming in. So I feel that fallacy, I think there's a point to this, right? I mean, if you're going to scale, you're going to need the qualities of both the experienced staff and the staff that is inexperienced, but also dares take the steps, because scaling is scary and not everybody can be brave. Sometimes being a little stupid is not a bad thing. You know what I mean? The overly wise, and I'm one of those, might hesitate, right? Say, oh, is this an opportunity or is this a trap? But a person that hasn't gone through that could actually push me over the edge and say, look, Tariq, listen, look at these things. And that's the teamwork I love. You understand? And that is about recruiting the right people, seeing that they could gel together and they can complement each other, but they share values. They share values, and I can find that across borders, across ages, gender wise, whatever, if you're looking for the right stuff.
Yeah.
I, I,
I
I
love
mean, this,
that.
yeah.
I want to ask you a question from the audience, which I also wanted to inquire about, because, like as you've said, you do this combination of both the seasoned, experienced leaders, but also the 20 years younger people who you just see something in, right?
Mm, mm.
And you create the space for them to grow, and I think that's really commendable because not a lot of leaders would do that. Daniela asks, and I have a similar question, which is you were saying like you need to detect things in them. So the question is, how do you know if somebody is going to be good at scaling or not? Courage
Ooh,
and a little bit of foolishness, you've already said.
yeah.
What else?
Well, okay, so it's about the person. Again, it's not the CV. I usually, when I do interviews, I throw away the CV. I look at the person, right? I ask a few questions. I let them talk, and then I try to find out who they are as a person. What drives them? What makes them angry? What what gets them going? Their passions. And in a job interview, it's extremely difficult, to get people to open up. So there's a special technique for that, but that I'm keeping to myself. So people who have been in interviews with me, they know what kind of questions I
I'm gonna
ask them.
tag them. I'm gonna tag them in the comments and say like, give us the secret sauce.
Yeah, the secret sauce, but you need to get under the skin of the person in an interview,
Mm.
because everybody just wants to shield themselves from this with their CV, or they just want to show you their best side. I'm not interested in their bloody best side. I want to see how they are in a crunch, when the shells are flying, and I want to see how they work, in the crucible. And for that, I might have to hire them first and push
I
them
agree.
through that and take the risk. So guys, take risks when you hire people. Have probation periods. That's what I would do. And then be aware that some people won't hack it and they'll have to leave. And other people, they'll hack it, they'll make it through. And that's my basic tip. So hire the right people on gut instinct if you
Mhm.
can, but be prepared to do a 360, and don't lose faith because you had to do it. It's just the way it is. Life is like that, right? There's no AI system that will detect 6 months in the future how a leader or how a person will be. There's nothing like that today. There's no projections. Sorry, you gotta go with your gut.
Couldn't agree more, honestly. That's what probation periods are for. And no
Yeah,
matter how smart you think you are at interviews, it's a toss of a coin, honestly. There's nothing there. And then you need to work with someone. And some people who you kind of discounted and weren't quite sure were going to make it, they'll surprise the hell out of you. And people who interview really well will flop in the day to day. And you can only know that by working with them.
yeah.
All right, so let's move into the organization further and talk about how teams are going to change and adapt and individual contributors in this process. Kareem here starts us off with a question about, do you think that the culture of a company changes or should change when you scale?
Yes, it changes.
In
It
which way?
changes. First of all, whenever you bring in new people, a culture changes. They bring culture with them. The issue is, how can you as a leader see to it that the core values of your culture don't change too much, and that they are so residual that they can manage more people coming in and having new takes on values or new takes on other things. But as long as the core is still strong, you're okay. But if your core isn't strong, and by that I mean you haven't really planned it through, you haven't discussed it, you're unsure of it yourselves, you are susceptible to what I call culture, like, explosion. you know you get people coming from one corporate side and they know everything best because that's how you do stuff. You got people who have no culture at all wanting to learn culture from people, and you've got people who are not aware that there is a culture, even. So with that kind of an organization, you risk what I call cultural explosion. You will not last. That company will not last. Even their customers will not really be able to define them. Yeah. So
Mhm.
for me, if you have a strong culture, it doesn't mean it's not inclusive of other ideas or other takes on things. A strong culture is inclusive, but you need to keep to the core values. If you don't mesh with those, I'm sorry, your culture, then you are not going to be able to work in the team in the same
Yeah.
way. And that's why the values need to be something that are connected to the purpose of the company, connected to the people's hearts and minds, and they need to be clearly defined, and they need to be like freshened up. And sometimes you have to change them, because you realize, oh, this culture is not anymore what we
We are.
what we are. We're someone else. Okay, I've done that so many times. I would like take scrap culture and then sat down and done new diagrams on words that they feel define us, and usually 50-60% is the same, and then there's a new word, or there's an addition, right? And that's a good process. That's an
Yeah.
evolution. That's an evolution of culture. I love that. I love that. If you can't
Yeah.
evolve, you'll die.
True.
Culture needs to evolve. Yeah.
Very true. Google is famous for doing a review every year, actually. I know that some companies say this is it forever, this is who we are. And I do agree with you, there's a core that never changes. But there are also, you evolve with the times, you evolve with the new things you've learned and discovered along the way. And cultures
Yeah.
that don't change are dead, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if you look at like cultures with a big C, not just inside organizations, but also around the globe. Cultures
Right.
that don't learn and evolve and merge with other things, they end up being museified. They die. So I
Yes.
think that's a really relevant point. And I know you've done a lot of work in the organization around, even if there's always going to be more work to do, but you've worked around the values, the purpose, engaging team members around that. What other, let's say, cleanups do you think like are things you want to look at when you realize you're on the verge of that curve going up?
Yeah, so I have a trilogy of things I always use in most organizations. They're the same. Organization first, right? Like organize your teams, think it through. I mean, what is their purpose? What are they doing? Who are they reporting to? So people need a home, guys. They need a home even at work where they feel, oh yeah, this is me. That's how you can get appreciation for your work. That's how you can get recognition, but also get feedback if you're not doing the right stuff. So you need a place in this, right, organization. So once you're done with the bigger stuff, you need a place. It needs to be defined. Once that place is in, that organization is placed, they need to define processes that they own, that are theirs, that are part of what brings a company together. It's not only about defining the processes, but you got to live them. You got to do it every day, and that's very difficult. People kind of map up a process, and then it's in a drawer somewhere, right? And then you do something else. Then okay, then fine, then redraw the process, document it, or just keep it for new people, right? So it works. And then finally, the tools, because without tools, we human beings, we're just back to the Stone Age, right? I mean, at the end of the day. And I love the tools that are available to us today that make our work more fun, efficient, and gives us time to be with our, be creative and also be with our families more, because work isn't everything. It's just a job, guys, at the end of the day. So tools are really important. So these three elements are essential. And as a scaling company, if you don't have these set together with the values and purpose and all of that, you're in trouble. You're gonna be catching up constantly, and you're gonna have traffic jams internally, and all your so planning. And I mean, I'm not much of an architect, Marilyn. I gotta tell you, I know architects. I know I have many friends who are architects, and I really am in awe of their big picture, small picture, mental
Yeah.
ability, and the creative and the structural side of things. It's very, very interesting. And I think leaders need to be a bit of architects, or you need one at least who can help you with this kind of stuff, or maybe a partner or a consultant, right? Doesn't matter.
I
But
love that.
this is so important. Yeah, it's worth the investment. If you're hiring 50 people, that's an investment. Why not invest in getting the right structure before you start plugging them into the data sockets?
Yeah, that makes a lot. Did you know I'm an architect?
I did know.
I didn't know if you knew. You reminded me of an anecdote from an architect, which I think is such a beautiful story that represents that scaling out and scaling in. I tell it to my teams all the time, which is that once there was a lecture in my architecture school from one of the partners in a practice in Renzo Piano's practice. I don't know if you know him. He's like one of the megastar architects. Anyways, he was here to talk about a building that they had done for Hermes in like that road in Tokyo that has all of the luxury houses. And there was like this big concept, and it was a lantern, and they did like a billion things to kind of hide the floors so you couldn't see them from outside. Like it was like a really big conceptual piece. And then he told us in the middle of his, hour-long lecture, he said, and this is the project where we decided to replace the screws in the bathroom with a screw that did not have an X, thing, but an hexagonal one. And I sat there, I was really young and it took me years to understand, but it just stayed in my mind. I was like, why the hell
Yeah,
is he talking to us about the screws? you know? And then I tell this story when it comes to scale, which is that like if you have this grand vision of a beautiful concept you want to build, and
mm.
you don't obsess about the screws, that's the thing that'll get you,
That's
I
why I can never be an architect, Marilyn. I am not that kind of person. I
you're
do
not
not
the
obsess
guy.
about small details. I do not. I need the
Um,
help. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think it's good to recognize that and to surround, there people who can worry about the screws and people who can worry about the big concept, and everything in the middle is necessary for it to work. I think is kind of what you're saying. And as an architect, I try to be good at going from up and down that elevator. But some people are better at this, and some people are better at that, and it's a
Sure.
team that kind of makes it work, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, does I have a question also about team dynamics, and then I want to talk about how you also grow in new regions and new geographies. But just the last one on the team dynamic piece, which is how do you think that managing conflict or disagreement changes when the team grows?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. And managing conflict in general is about escalation. Okay, it's about escalation. So what I look at, regardless if it's a small or big organization, I think the same structure can be applied. If you two can't agree on this, there needs to be a chain where you can lift it up to another person who does arbitrate the issue, because you can't just let it lie. This is really important in organization. You need that transparency where people pick up an issue, and if they don't agree, you need to bring in someone who has the authority to arbitrate that quite quickly, regardless. So for conflicts, and conflicts in big organizations are different than small, right? You know this. So in small organizations, over the coffee table, people are throwing things at each other or saying stuff, right? And then they're resolving it, done, khalas, they're moving on. But in bigger organizations, the conflicts could be simmering for a long time, and they cause what I call blockages, right? And also parallel organizations like that have been created because someone got pissed off at something a while back, and now they have their little regime on one end, right? And you end up scratching your head as a leader saying, why is this not working? And why am I not, what's wrong? And then you put on a disguise and you go into the coffee room and you find out what's going on. You'll see, okay, there's this segmentation going on. Because there is no clear leadership, there's no clarity, transparency, there's no arbitration and resolving the issues. They need to be resolved at once, guys. As soon as you think, oh, this is not important enough to even discuss, you're going to get it back. It's going to roll back in a few months' time, and it's going to stop you when you want to take that deal or when you want to meet a deadline. It's going to screw up everything. So resolve your issues as quickly as possible. But for that to happen in a big org, you need to have conflict resolution like charters and training, and team leaders need to not be scared of, if they're, oh, okay, this is actually an issue, I need to address this right away, not just say, oh, this will solve itself, which many people do. They say, oh, if we ignore it, it'll solve itself out. Yeah, in a small organization, definitely, but in a big one,
That is really great advice. And I couldn't agree more. Give people a process,
yes.
because human beings don't like conflict. They shy away from it. Most people, I mean, some have developed the ability to, but most people shy away from it and avoid it at all costs. And having a clear, safe process to go through it is super, super helpful. I think that's really
Mm.
great advice. Let's talk a little bit about, scale usually always comes with, unless you're in China, maybe, but even in China, scale comes with also being geographically more distributed. In Dubai, of course, we are multinational from day one, just from the nature of the country, but it brings in new cultures and new ways of thinking about the world, and definitely also time zone issues and lack of co-location and all of everything that comes with scaling regionally or globally. What do you think that what you've learned from doing that, and what leaders should keep in mind when they suddenly now have a second office or a second location that they're looking at?
I think COVID has taught us a lot about this. We've been forced to work apart and still have things going. And I think that the great takeaway is when we stopped doing that, when we came back and met each other in person, I realized how important human interaction is. You understand? The being a leader or being a team where you see each other, where you talk to each other, where there's laughter, there's joy. Like, it's a lot about that, right? And working together and discussing things like this and solving them right over the table. I love that, regardless of where you are in an organization. Now, you can of course do this using the technology that we have, the tools we have, but I mean, traveling to your team members or having them come in is very, very important. That what I call the tactile, or the organization that at least is in touch with itself, right? Leaders that kind of go round. So I'm one of those that would go around the office every morning and say hi to everybody and check it. How are things? Are you good? Have a cup of tea. I had 400 employees once, and it became really a long walk where I ended up at 11 o'clock, ended up like, where did my day go? And I was just talking to people, and the effect that had on the staff was really interesting. You had new people coming in, and who's he? Yeah, oh, he's our CEO. Oh, okay. What's he doing? He's walking around with his coffee mug, and he's talking to people, eating a Danish. And all right, that is really important. So regardless if we're sitting all over the world, right? How do we do that? That means one, we need to have routines where we have time to talk to each other about other things than just work, right? And to connect with people over borders. Now my family my father left India in the 60s. We're immigrants in Sweden. For us, we're used to multi-language. We're used to, having different, but a lot of our friends from Sweden had no idea what we went through. And we had to bridge that, gap from an early stage in life. So for me, what I would put it down to is that, if you can communicate people to people, regardless of where you are, if you can come past that communication barrier and have people feel that they're at home in a company, even if they're from Transylvania or if they're from India, because they're sharing that core values, they're sharing the same thing, which I think you can find in most cultures. You have to. There are very few cultures that don't follow. You can't find the same target group on. So I think you need to go in there again and just need to communicate with them regularly, because if you lose touch with them, then they also feel like, oh, I'm not a part of this. So my language is different. I'm doing different things. So the company culture, with its traditions, with its inclusive culture, and I'm so happy Zenshin has 20 different nationalities.
Wow.
20. And we've fixed the language barrier. It's the common values. It's the fact that we're a family, right? It's that's what creates the value in the company across the borders, and that's how you grow as well. When you go to a new country, you're going to find these people, and you're going to employ them. And they match. They're everywhere.
Okay, amazing. I love that. That's really a great point. And I think the last question here that I'll take from Anwar, maybe you can give us an example. We're talking about routine and rituals and finding things that everybody shares. Can you tell us about one of the routines or rituals that you have with your teams that you really love?
Oh, so this is a ritual that comes from Sweden. It's called fika. Fika means you take a cup of coffee and maybe something to chew on together with your buddies at work, and you talk about everything but work. Talk about your families, you talk about something else for 10, 15 minutes. Now at Zenshin, we do this, not in all of Zenshin yet, but it's being introduced. every Friday morning, company has a little breakfast where people sit down, and work talk is not allowed for 30 minutes. And it's a great way of getting to know each other, crossing barriers. That's a routine I'm hoping we're going to continue to do, even if we do it in smaller groups, which is okay. But you should do that, right? Yeah.
That's really cool. Actually, I heard somebody on your team use that word, and I was wondering whether it was a GCC word. I had no idea. I should have looked it up.
No, it's a Swedish word.
Yeah, brilliant. We're going to put that in our ritual bank if that's okay with you. We're going to steal it, but we'll reference you guys. And yeah, we do that. Like we can't share food because we're all in different places, but sometimes we bring our own snacks
Yeah.
to that session. But we also religiously spend time together doing something, anything other than work, even remotely. I would definitely agree. And actually, with that, I have encroached into the territory of the rapid fire. That's usually one of our rapid fire questions, but Anwar also asked it. And then let me then complete the other 4 questions of the rapid fire. Are you ready for that? All right. So, what is the one thing that every team needs?
Love.
Oh, that's beautiful. What's the one thing that every team needs to avoid?
Fear.
Good one. A good team leader is?
A good listener. And yeah.
then anything else? You want to add anything?
A good listener and a support. That's his job. You're a service person.
Yeah.
You and the janitorial services
I love
have
that.
this have the same purpose.
I agree. You're only as successful as the least successful person on your team.
Correct.
And then the last question, since you already answered the ritual question, is what is the best book on teams according to you?
So my favorite book on teams is a book called The 4 Agreements. Now, The 4 Agreements is about Toltec wisdom, and it's about a personal journey that everybody has to make. So every human being in every team is a person itself. If you know yourself, if you can work with yourself, you can follow certain agreements, I think as a team, you would be awesome. You would be awesome. So it's always about the person in itself. So for me, that is a book that helped me as a leader, helped my teams as well, because I used a lot of the workings there and the agreements that you need to have with yourself as a human being. And I recommend people to read it. It's the author's name is Ruiz Don Miguel, and you can find the book on Amazon. It's a small book, but it's really practical. So definitely, yeah, that's
a brilliant recommendation. Thank you for that. And with that, we come to the end of our episode together. I'm really grateful for you taking the time and sharing all of your lessons from scaling teams in various places around the world. Thank you, Tariq. Very, very grateful for that.
Thank you, Marilyn, for having me, and Cosmic Centaurs. You guys rock.
Oh, thank you so much. We're so happy to be watching you guys on this journey, I have to say. And of course, a huge thank you goes to our attendees as always for tuning in and all the questions that they asked. I think we covered most of them, but there might be a couple I missed that you might want to go back and answer in the comments later, Tariq. As always, this video is available forever on the internet, and we will be reposting it as well later on YouTube and on our website. Speaking of our website, that's cosmiccentaurs.com. Please do go over, sign up for our newsletter. Don't miss out our next events and go through our content. We produce content every week on a lot of the topics that Tariq and I discussed today and a few others. And we'd love for you to join our community. Do subscribe to our newsletter. It'll make us really happy. And then just before I sign us off, one last thing. Next week, Thursday, March 24th, at the same time, I'll be hosting Peter Mandan, who's the head of trust and employer compliance at WorkMotion. And together we'll be discussing the nitty-gritty of what it means to grow teams globally. And, it's all nice to say we can hire people all over the world. It's another to actually legally do it. And so Peter's going to come and give us a bit of wisdom on that topic. So please do join us next week. And with that, I am signing us out. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.